You know, I was supposed to record this video days ago, and for whatever reason, like, things just kept getting in the way. I was sick, my voice wasn't great, like, whatever. And I think it was the universe telling me, hold up, bitch, because you have a whole other riggery to include into this video. Because, spoiler alert, Lemon was possibly robbed right in front of our very eyes, depending on how you look at things. I know the internet and Twitter specifically, along with other Rue girls, definitely think she was. So that will add just another check to this list of queens we're going to discuss today. This is going to be kind of a different style of video. It's going to be kind of like a rapid, let's just go through the seasons, talk about some shit from all of them, different times that queens have been put in the bottom for baffling reasons. And what we're going to do is try and just describe the situation, and I'll give my 2 cents on why I think they were put into the bottom. Because if it wasn't for their performance or their runway, there's always a narrative reason or some type of reason that production has for putting these queens into the bottom and possibly sacrificing them to keep other girls around or what have you. So we're going to go through all of these different scenarios, and I'll give my 2 cents. It'll just be kind of a chill little video. So let's start with the first one that I could come up with. Now, I was kind of shaky on seasons 2 and 3 of Drag Race. I haven't seen them in a really long time. We obviously haven't gotten to the riggery of those, so I will watch them again when we get there. But for now, I really didn't remember much, so I asked a couple of my friends, and they were like, yeah, nothing really seemed that riggy when it comes to, like, bottom placements. I said, cool. So the first one that I can come up with that was like, why is this queen in the bottom? That is Latrice Royale in the debate challenge on season 4. This is her first time in the bottom, and she's put up against Dita Ritz, and she does survive. She sends Dita Ritz home. So let's look at this challenge. They had to kind of have a presidential campaign and take part in a debate. This challenge was pretty not good. I would say that of everyone, the winner made sense, and the winner was She Who Shall Not Be Named. Not because she was funny, but because I think she had a solid campaign and some solid answers. But this was kind of just a meh challenge all around. Now, if Willem was still around, this would have been one for Willem to win because no one else really did much. But I will say, one of the most, and probably the only moment from this episode that is still talked about today in like the pantheon of Drag Race quotes is Latrice saying, I looked down at Miss O'Hara and I realized that, yes, she is ugly, and I'm at peace with that. And honestly, I could not tell you a single other thing that somebody did in this episode, except Fifi did some, like, racist stuff. Questionable, but we are not going to touch on that. So why is Latrice in the bottom? Did she deserve it? I'm going to say no. I think that Fifi didn't do well, Chad didn't do well, Dita didn't do well. So why did Latrice, despite her having the funniest moment of the entire debate, get put into the bottom? I honestly think it's because someone needed to send Dita Ritz home. Now, Dita Ritz at this point in the competition, she hadn't been doing well for a while. She's been in the bottom, she's been low, she's been safe. I don't think she had a single high placement this whole season. And of everybody left, Dita had no storyline, and she had no chance to win the season. So it was very obvious Dita was going to be the next to go. Very much like Ivy Winters at the final 7 of season 5. She's the obvious one that's going to go home next when everyone else has story potential and winning potential. So the question is, how do we send Dita Ritz home when she just gave us one of the most iconic lip syncs of all time just a couple of episodes prior? Now, at this point, they'd seen everybody but Latrice and Chad lip sync who was left in the competition. And the song is Gladys Knight. It's very, like, soulful song. I think it's pretty obvious that Latrice would probably do well, as if you look at her audition tape, if you look at, you know, the kind of things that she's been doing in her career, this song is right in her wheelhouse. It's right up her alley. And even though they haven't seen her lip sync, I think that they could have banked on the fact that she would definitely do good enough to justify sending Dita home. Probably better than Chad or Fifi or She Who Shall Not Be Named could have done to this type of song. So I do think Latrice was definitely thrown into the ring in order to take out a fellow lip sync assassin who just kind of overstayed their welcome in the narrative of the season. And we're going to see that kind of happen a lot as we go through these, where they put someone who is a better lip syncer than the great lip syncer that they want to send home into the bottom. This next one that I picked out, though, I think is a little bit different. It is Jocelyn Fox in the Stand Up Challenge on season 6. So I think there's a couple of factors here that lead to Jocelyn being in the bottom. Because if you look at the episode itself, it's very obvious Ben de la Creme and Laganja Estranja are the two worst. Like, flat out, so clear as day. They got the worst reception from the audience. They barely got a single joke out, if any. And everyone else at least had one joke or got one laugh, including Jocelyn. So how does Jocelyn end up in the bottom and Ben de la Creme not? Well, this is the episode immediately following Ben de la Creme being saved by the double sachet when she lip-synced against Darian Lake. So this was the first time I think that was used in a way that it was like, Ben de la Creme, you definitely lost that lip sync, but I still want to see what you can do, so we're going to keep you around a little bit longer. We're going to give you a lifeline. So there's that storyline going for Ben de la Creme. If she immediately goes right back into the bottom, it kind of would have been for nothing, right? And we do see Ben do great in some of the challenges after this. I think she has 2 high placements in a row after this challenge. So I do think that there was merit in bringing her back for sure. But it would have been bad to keep her around, and then she immediately falls back down into the bottom. And against Laganja Estranja, I don't think that she would have made it out alive. And it would have kind of felt like, wow, that whole saving Ben de la Creme was pretty pointless. So who do we put down in the bottom instead? The options here are Adore Delano and Jocelyn Fox. They were the two, I would say, that had the more negative critiques, had less jokes than everyone else, not everything landed. So between the two, who do you care about more? Because Laganja Estranja is one of the greatest lip syncers this show has ever seen, one of the best dancers this show has ever seen. Who do we want to put in the bottom and potentially see go home against Laganja? Now, I do think Adore definitely had a better chance of sending Laganja home, and it would have been a really fun lip sync because these are the two rivals, right? They came in as friends, now they're rivals. They have a fight this episode, and it would have been a really kind of like Tamisha and Candy Mew situation. But I think that they go for Jocelyn just to be safe, because kind of like Dita Ritz, Jocelyn hadn't been doing super well. She had done well in Snatch Game. She did well in the rap challenge. But other than that, she's kind of just safe or not good, right? So we haven't seen her lip sync. If we're going to lose anybody out of this group of 8, Jocelyn has the least amount of winning potential and storyline. So putting Jocelyn here, 1, saves Adore from possibly going home, saves Ben de la Creme from possibly going home, and as we see, actually does send home Laganja, whose storyline I do think was up. This episode was a culmination of her entire season-long arc, so I don't think that they potentially knew Jocelyn would send Laganja home, and if we were going to lose anybody, Jocelyn is probably the best option here with who we have left. So now we're going to move on to season 8. As you can see in these early seasons, there's not a ton of options. I mean, there were a couple that I was like, someone else could have been in the bottom over them, but they weren't like some of these other ones we're going to get to, where there's a queen who had no place being anywhere near the bottom, and then they end up lip syncing. And one of them I'm going to talk about now is Layla Mcqueen in the first episode of season 8. Now, this one is rough because I do think that Layla struggled in some elements of this episode, but I think that she did really well in the main challenge with this incredible apocalypse look. And she looks hot, she looks super good. This whole coat thing, something different we haven't seen a queen try in this challenge. I think she did a great job. Now, she gets heavily critiqued on her photo shoot, and that is what ends up putting her in the bottom over someone like Robbie Turner, who had a really bad runway look, but did fine in the photo shoot. Now, when has the photo shoot ever been a reason to put someone in the bottom? Because if it was, Alaska Thunderfuck would have lip-synced in the first episode of season 5 when she couldn't even fully participate in the photo shoot itself. To me, this felt like Robbie is giving us some great confessionals. She's giving us some like snotty attitude, mean girl, fun stuff that we love to see in the edit, and to potentially make some storylines later on if she gets into it with other girls. Whereas Layla, very shy, wasn't really giving a ton when it came to confessionals or drama, potentially, anything like that. I think this was fully, this girl's boring, and we just don't care enough about her. Why would we risk putting someone like Robbie in the bottom when we could just throw her in? And if Naysha sends her home, she sends her home. And if she sends Naysha home, she sends Naysha home. And this, to me, really felt like the prime example of we could not give a fuck about this queen, so let's just put her on the bottom, because if we're going to sacrifice anybody, it might as well be her. Now, let's talk about one from season 11. And we're actually going to have a couple from season 11. Season 9, season 10, pretty fair when it comes to who ends up lip syncing. Season 11, I think we're going to see a big trend now of it happens a lot. And we're going to talk about a lot of them. So the first one that made me roll my eyes a little bit was when Raja O'Hara is put in the bottom during the Farm to Runway challenge. Now, did Raja make the greatest garment I've ever seen? No. But you could tell the work that she put into this look. She made pants, she made the hair, she made a top, she had a whole bouquet of flowers. It looked like a fully completed, conceptualized look from head to toe. Whereas some other queens you could tell didn't have that, such as Vanjie, who really just taped some stuff to her body and called it a day. I think at this point, Raja had been in the bottom so much. She had been stirring shit with other girls. She had been the villain of the season at this point. And I really think this just came down to not wanting to put Nina West or Vanjie in the bottom. And Raja was the next best option on the table. She kind of didn't have any storylines going with any queens at the moment, whereas this felt like a moment in the season where everyone had something going on except for Raja and Sugarcane. And who is the next one to be put in the bottom unfairly? It's Sugarcane in the Draga Cadabra challenge, which, I mean, this has been talked about, time and time again. One of the most blatant instances of riggery I have ever seen. If you want to know more, go watch my Riggery of Season 11 video. Sugarcane is put in the bottom despite being on the winning team, and despite there being 4 other girls on the other side who all deserve it more than her. So what happens here? Everyone else is more interesting than Sugarcane, and that's really what it comes down to. Everyone else has narrative stuff going on. Everyone else has challenge wins, except for Vanjie. And everyone else has stakes, whereas Sugarcane has kind of been a very motherly presence on the season. She gives a good confessional every now and again, but we haven't seen her fully emerge as a competitor. She's had a couple high placements. She's also been in the bottom a lot. So if you're going to lose anybody at this final 7, it's going to be Sugarcane. The problem comes when she actually does really well in the challenge and is on the team that completely knocks this challenge out of the park. How do you justify putting her on the bottom? You can try your best, right? You can say her runway wasn't good. You can say of the 3 on her team, she was the worst. But that still doesn't take away from the fact that there was an entire other team who did so much worse in the challenge, and you're not going to pick any of them. This really is a prime example of if you're not giving good TV, you're not going to be a priority when it comes to production. And you get to the point in the season where everybody is giving good TV and giving storylines and has challenge wins, except you're kind of the odd duck and you're going to be sacrificed. And that is exactly what happens here with Sugarcane. Let's move on to season 12. The one that really stood out to me was Widow Vondu in the debate challenge. Yes, both times there was a debate challenge. There was some riggery going on. Isn't that interesting? Whenever we do a political challenge, they're like, let's get shady. How fitting. But so yeah, Widow Vondu in this challenge was absolutely fine. Like, fine. She wasn't great. She wasn't bad. She actually gave a performance that was very reminiscent of Sharon Needles when she won this challenge on season 4. They have the same kind of vibe to their characters. They gave the same kind of answers. Unlike Sharon Needles, who won this challenge, Widow Vondu is put in the bottom. And fully, this is to save Sherry Pie and Gigi Good. Both of them were the clear worst, and they were both saved. And at this point, Widow Vondu had a storyline of being like her self-saboteur, her inner saboteur was coming out, and she was filled with doubt and blah, 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 blah. So what do you do when your two favorites both tanked and we can't have either of them go home, especially because neither of them are that good at lip syncing, which we saw from the first 2 episodes. Well, neither of them can lip sync. We have to put Jackie Cox and Widow Vondu in the bottom. Widow Vondu, despite having a win, just was kind of in a bad headspace, and it kind of becomes a lesson, right? Like, oh, you're inner saboteur. Gotcha, gal. She becomes a lesson for future girls. So yeah, this one really hurt, especially because I was such a Widow Vondu stan. I loved her. I really did not think she deserved to be in the bottom here, especially when it was just to save their 2 favorites, right? And we see it a couple times actually this season. And if you want to look at that, go watch my Riggery of season 12 video. Now, season 13. Seems like there's one every year now. This one, I'm not going to talk about as much because it's kind of obvious. It's Tamisha Iman in the Discomentary Challenge. She, again, fine, safe performance. She had some of the hardest choreo, and she nails every move except for one. She might be not giving as much face as everyone else, but it's also because she has a colostomy bag and can't have full range of motion and is probably concerned about breaking this bag. There's all this stuff going on. But, one, we have to save Gottmik, because Gottmik fully was the worst in this challenge, but we cannot put Gottmik in the bottom because we saw from episode 1, she can't lip sync. I wonder why they're doing all these lip syncs in the first couple of episodes. It's almost like to set up for later when we can determine who is worthy of putting in the bottom and who is not, who we need to save, right? So, Gottmik can't lip sync. Candy Muse is going to lip sync, but it's deserved. Who can we put in the bottom with her to potentially go home? Tamisha Iman. They just had a fight the last episode. Very fitting to see them now lip syncing against each other. And yeah, Tamisha goes home. And to me, that was a very blatant riggery. Like, sometimes it's like, come on, guys. Like, do you really think people aren't going to see this? Like, when it lines up that well, the 2 people that just had a fight last week, now they're in the bottom together, and they're going to send one of them home. Now I want to talk about the most recent from a regular American Drag Race season, Carrie Colby in the teaser episode last week. I was very confused, and I'll just admit I'm spoiled. I look at the spoilers so that I can look for the details in the episodes, right? If I know what's going to happen, then I can watch the episode and see what they're doing. And to me, I definitely saw what they were doing when I knew that Kerri was going to be in the bottom. I saw this whole, she's not really doing well during the recordings, and, you know, she's giving that storyline that we get a lot, where it's, I just want to be pretty. I don't want to look ugly. I don't want to look stupid. I just want to look pretty. Valid, but I actually think, looking at the final product, Kerri managed to do the whole look pretty thing, but also brought it to a level where she could still be funny. I don't think she was bad. I don't think she was one of the best. I think she was, again, a solid safe, much like half these girls I've talked about. I think that kind of like Lawrence Chaney, right, from UK, during the acting challenge at the Final Four, she really struggled during the recording, but when it came to the final product, she got it together and it turned out fine. As we saw, Lawrence Chaney was safe despite this. Carrie Colby thrown into the bottom. And why? Because it's to save Georges. That is who I'm saying right now is being pushed by production 1000%. She was put in the top for the ball unfairly, And now I think she was fully saved from the bottom. Could you please tell me one thing Jorgeous did in that teaser? One thing. She had, what, maybe 2 lines, 3 lines? I think they hid her a lot because from what we saw in the recording, what she was doing was not selling. And then when it comes to the final product, we don't see her anywhere. She gets like 2 lines and they're just like throwaways. And it seemed like they gave Kerri the storyline on the main stage that should have gone to Jorgeous, because the whole time Jorgeous is saying during recording, I'm nervous. I don't want to look stupid. I feel like I'm not coming across how I want to. And all of this is true. So when it comes to the critiques, why is Kerri the one then that's like, hey, you're too scared to be ugly, you're too scared to be stupid, and it's affecting your performance? When it seems like that's what's happening to Jorgeous. Yes, Kerri might not want to look stupid and all this, but as we saw, it really didn't affect her performance that much. She still was able to give some funny lines, some funny facial expressions. The final product turned out a-okay for Kerri, whereas Jorgeous, we don't really know because they didn't show her a ton. Kind of like how they didn't show Maddie a ton, probably because they didn't want to give her a high placement. They barely showed Jorgeous to save Jorgeous. And that's fully why I think Kerri was in the bottom, so that they could continue that storyline. But instead of with Jorgeous, let's do it with Kerri, who kind of had a similar thing going on, but did manage, I think, to do a better job in the end. Now, let's talk about some All-Star seasons. So the first All-Star bottom that made me very confused is Katya in the sequel episode. So this is when she does like the Velma and Wheezy zombie sketch with Detox, and both of them do great. It's fine. They get good critiques. Katya's runway gets some like pretty okay critiques. And then randomly there's a bottom 3 and randomly Katya is in it. So why? Well, if we look at who is in the top 2 that week, it's Alaska and Fifi O'Hara. If we look at who else is in the bottom, it's Roxy Andrews and Alyssa Edwards. So if Alaska wins this lip sync, she's obviously not going to send home Roxy, which means she would probably send home Alyssa. I'm sure that producers wanted as much Alyssa Edwards as they possibly could, so why not throw another option in, someone who has already been in the bottom, Katya, which gives Alaska kind of another option if she were to win. Now, if Fifi were to win, regardless, I think that she was going to send home Alyssa, right? So this one I think was just to fully give another option so that potentially it could save Alyssa. We see it doesn't work. They both send home Alyssa. Katya lives to see another day, and she continues to slay the rest of the competition. The next one is Aja in the Warhol Ball. Why is Aja saved here? Because they don't care about Aja. Again, they just don't care. There were plenty of times in this competition that I thought Aja got an unfair placement. In Snatch Game, should have been top 2. In The Bitchler, could have just been low instead of bottom 3. Literally made a bottom 3 placement just to throw Aja in that one episode, and then we don't get a bottom 3 again. I think that they asked Aja back because they thought they were getting Valentina. That's a great storyline, and then Valentina drops out. You still have Aja. And yes, Aja is fully delivering, fully could have made it to the end, but I don't think they care about Aja without Valentina. If they were going to push anybody, it was going to be Valentina. They're not going to push Aja. They're not going to give Aja the flowers that they deserve. That is fully why they get sent home here. In what I think is the best outfit of the entire night, using references that are fully Studio 54, despite RuPaul saying that they aren't. Again, this has been talked about a ton. You has an amazing video on this, so go check out their video. Yeah, let's move on to Valentina in the Snatch Game. This one is very interesting because I actually don't think Valentina did that bad. It wasn't great, but I think the problem is Ru just didn't get the references because she's doing Eartha Kitt, but specifically Eartha Kitt as Yzma from The Emperor's New Groove. And I don't think RuPaul has seen The Emperor's New Groove and does not get a single reference that Valentina is throwing at her. And if you don't get the references, it's not going to be that funny, right? Kind of like Electra Shock doing Moira Rose from Schitt's Creek, but as Catherine O'Hara. Again, Ru doesn't get it, Michelle doesn't get it, and Electra's low for that episode. So that is one thing I think that's working against Valentina here. RuPaul not getting the references that she's throwing. But why would they put her in the bottom so soon? It's episode 3. I wish I had a better explanation for this. The only thing I can think of is that they knew Gia Gunn was going home. They knew everyone was over Gia. They wanted her gone. Valentina had won a challenge before, but then again, so had Monet, and Monet actually deserved to be in the bottom. I truly don't know. This is one of the ones that I'm very confused on, and I don't necessarily have a full opinion, but obviously Riggery of All-Stars 4 coming soon. Hopefully I'll tease something out but between now and then. I need to watch that season again to prepare for that, so we'll see what happens. All-Stars 6, Akira Davenport in the halftime show. She's Prince. She does an amazing job. She looks beautiful. I think she does a really good job of getting that gender fuck vibe while still being Akira, while still being Prince, while giving all the dance moves. Akira did fine. There was plenty of other queens who I think could have taken the bottom placement, so why was it Akira? Well, if you look at the 2 queens who could have been in the bottom, it's Ginger Minge and Eureka. Well, Eureka, they put in the top, and Ginger Minge, there's no way they were going to put in the bottom for the second time in a row, 4 episodes into the season. Ginger Minge, I think, was someone they definitely, I don't necessarily think they pushed, but was someone they definitely wanted to see at the end. Because if you're going to bring back an All-Star 2 girl, she better, slay. There has to be justification for bringing back queens from All-Stars 2. Ginger Minge set the precedent. Now they can bring back whoever they want. So I really just think Akira, they didn't care about. Again, they just don't care about her. Why was she low on the ball? I don't know. Like, there's so many instances where Akira could have been in a different spot, a better spot, and they just put her in the worst case scenario every single time. So this is just an easy open and shut. They don't care about Akira C. Davenport. Okay, now we're going to get into some international ones, and there's actually kind of a lot. I had to cut some just because I was like, we can't go on forever. The first one we're going to talk about is Cheryl Hole in UK1 in the makeover. This one is really easy. Cheryl either wins this challenge or she goes home. And I don't think they wanted to lose anyone in that final 3, the Davinas, the Bagas, or the Vivians. So honestly, I do think Cheryl should have won this challenge. She had the best makeover. I mean, they literally looked like twins. They had family resemblance. Their costumes were cute. Their dancing was cute. They checked off every box, but you couldn't have Cheryl win this last episode before the finale and then go into the finale with, like, a track record that really didn't, like, deserve it. Like, I get why they did this. I fully do. Because looking at a finale with Baga, the Vivian, and Davina, it's like anybody could take this home. They all slayed this entire competition. Whereas if you have Cheryl there, it's kind of obvious Cheryl, there's no way they're going to give her the win because she hadn't done well until this last episode. So, yeah, Cheryl was sacrificed fully to keep the other 3 around for the finale. UK2, Joe Black. I honestly think they did this because it would send a message. Because Joe Black was the biggest name on this cast, and losing Joe Black first was a gag. And guess what? It was, and it shook all the other queens, and I think they fully did what they intended to do. But I feel terrible for Joe Black. UK3, Theresa May. Literally had probably the 3rd best Snatch game, which isn't saying much because mostly everyone did bad except for Kitty and Ella Vidae. But Theresa at least got 1 or 2 laughs, which some other queens didn't. Why did they get rid of Theresa May? Because they don't care about Theresa May. They never did. They never would. And she was sacrificed, basically. Okay, Alona and Tainomi in the paper ball. This was fully to save Priyanka and Boa. They didn't care about Alona. They didn't care about Tainomi. They did care about Boa. They did care about Priyanka. Open and shut case. Cynthia Kiss in the girl groups. So this one is rough because they had just given Cynthia a win. So they obviously cared about her enough to give her the win. But it was also a win that was pretty cut and dry, obvious. Who's in the bottom? If it's not her, it's probably Kendall Gender. And Kendall was the queen that they pushed the most on that season. I would say Kendall is the only queen on Canada 2 that had any riggery in their favor. So they didn't want to see Kendall lip sync this soon. They didn't want to see Kendall send home Eve. I don't know. Cynthia had already been in the bottom. Why not send her in the bottom again? Maybe it's a good storyline to have the leader be put in the bottom because their group wasn't great despite them actually being okay. This one, I don't know. There's not an obvious reason like in a lot of these, but I did think I want to mention it because it was kind of like a whoa moment, and a lot of people were upset. But let's finish off this video with the biggest one, or maybe no. Let me not blow it out of proportion. It's not the biggest one. It's the biggest one right now. All the Rue girls are pissed, and you know there's riggery when the Rue girls are pissed, when they're the ones on Twitter saying, riggery! Lemon, on the first episode of UK versus the World, jumped off a box into the splits and was sent home. Now, I will say, I don't think Lemon did great by any means. Like, I do think that there was issues with her performance. But at the end of the day, I was so bored by so many of the performances of this episode. Monique was like, okay, we've seen a girl. Juju, okay, we've seen a girl. Cheryl, you've just done this same thing that everyone else is doing and everyone else did it better. Like, there were so many options that I was like, I'm kind of bored. Why was Lemon the one that gets put into the bottom and gets the critique that they've seen it? Well, obviously you've seen it because 4 other girls did it in this one episode, one of them being the winner of this episode. So to me, that critique didn't have much value. Whatever, it's a throwaway. It's a justification. They really could have gone in more about her facial expressions. It was kind of a Yada Sofia during the halftime show. Like, she wasn't giving a lot of emotion. They really could have leaned into that, and I think it would have felt more justified. But I still think there was other girls that deserved the bottom placement over Lemon. Look at the fact that there was no low placement, right? There were 4 tops. There was Baga, Blue, and then our 2 winners, Pangina and Jimbo. There was no low placement. And I think that's because if you put anyone else in the low placement, it'd be kind of obvious that Lemon's was still better than theirs. It's kind of like hiding, right? You're hiding, putting Juju as low, because obviously talking about Juju's and talking about Lemon's was more exciting. Putting Monique there was more issues with Monique's, with her wig, and it was kind of a slow start to get there. You know, anytime you put someone in the low placement, it just makes Lemon look better. So by getting rid of that low placement altogether, you just focus on Lemon and Janie, and you just focus on the things that were wrong with theirs. And I think that the producers sometimes just think that we're going to forget, right? Like, if we don't focus on Jujubee's performance, they're just going to be like, yeah, no, it's Jujubee. She was fine. Lemon, though, did you see what was wrong with Lemon's? But, again, backfired. Poor Jujubee is getting torn to shreds on social media for having not gone home in Lemon's place. And why Lemon? I think because they don't want to put Jujubee in the bottom. They don't want to put Cheryl in the bottom. My biggest gripe with this season going in is that it was funded by the BBC. So the BBC is not going to want to lose the UK girls right off the bat. They're going to want to see them further in the season, right? So losing Cheryl, putting Cheryl in the bottom, potentially having her go home, not good for the BBC. Putting Juju in the bottom, one of the biggest fan favorites of all time, episode 1, not a good look. So I kind of think Lemon is the best option left, right? She has no stakes with the US. She has no stakes with RuPaul. There's no favoritism from RuPaul. She has no stakes with the BBC. So it's kind of like fine for everybody. No one involved in this production is mad if Lemon goes home first. And I fully do think that this is a very political season when it comes to networks and favoritism. And I think we're going to see that more moving forward. So let's just hope riggery of UK versus the World isn't as much of a nightmare as I'm kind of expecting it to be. But I guess we will see in 5 weeks when it's over. So those were the biggest ones for me, the ones that stood out to me. Let me know if there was any that you think that I missed, or if there was any you think didn't deserve to be on this list in the first place. As always, thank you guys so much for watching, and I'm recording this part later, and you can probably hear the snow plow outside because we got hit with the polar vortex. Just Ohio tings, but thank you guys so much for watching. Here are the links to all of my social medias, as well as all of my beautiful, iconic, legendary patrons. It has been a long day solving the mystery of why lemons are so sour, and well, after UK versus the World, we know the answer to that question, so mystery solved. Thank you guys so much, and I'll catch you in the next one.